The After6 podcast is meant for mature listening audiences only. Oh, the things they go on about. You just wouldn't forgive yourself. I'd feel bad, and you wouldn't want me to feel bad, would you? Don't say I didn't warn you. Visit me on my website at tanyamvoice.wordpress.com or check out my podcast, Lightning Bolt Theater of the Mind, at www.lightningbolt.podbean.com. Bean with an N. Alrighty. I'm Tanya Milevich, and you're listening to the motherfucking After6 podcast. Presented by Hyperreal Media Group, LLC.
All right, we're getting close. Oh man, let's see. So this is going to be an experiment, and can I pull this off? So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you've tried the technical aspects of this first before we're doing this.
Theoretically. Hey, I'm Adam.
Hey, I'm Travis, and thanks for listening to the After6 podcast, the first episode of 2015.
We're back, bitches.
Exactly. This is going to be our year. I have a feeling.
This is a strong year.
Strong year. We might start recording more than once a month. Hey, man, holidays are fucking busy time.
Fuck yeah, man.
You gotta travel. Shit. Been sick. Shit like that, so...
Well, then you called me on Christmas, and you were like, "Dude, we're doing an episode right now." And I'm like, "Dude, the kids are here. Like, it's mad. No, right now, episode."
I know, because fucking time is limited, man. So when the kids are gone or they're all asleep or something, you got to jump on that fucking opportunity. And of course, you couldn't do it.
Of course not. Of course not. This is actually a special episode that we actually got a guest to come on the show.
Yeah, sucker. He must not realize that we don't have any listeners yet.
Oh, he doesn't need to know that.
No, but I'm sure that everybody will like him. His name's Kevin Bartini, stand-up comedian from New York. Pretty interesting stuff. Checked out some of the stuff on YouTube. It's pretty good. And there's, some other stuff that we could talk about. So we're really excited to have the first guest, and hopefully, this opens up the doors and we can get some more. We're still eyeing Sweet Baby Dave.
Sweet Baby Dave.
Sweet Baby Dave's like our prodigal son that we're hoping we can get, but this guy's way better than fucking Sweet Baby Dave. So
see, now Sweet Baby Dave's not going to come on the show, man. You can't disparage him like that. He's fragile.
Fuck him. I don't care if he's on the show or not. Matter of fact, Sweet Baby Dave is now banned from our show.
He's got a lifetime ban.
He's now banned. He is not permitted on our show, which I'm sure will break his fucking heart.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know who I want to get on the show?
Who's
Side
that?
note?
Who?
It's fucking Stevie Ray Bonbon.
Oh, are you, really?
Yes. And because he's such a unique, and again, this applies to fucking nobody knows who we're talking about. But this dude's such a unique character. It's interesting just to hear him talk about shit.
Mm-hmm.
He might be borderline fucking genius too. And whenever we posted the last episode, he sent me a message on Facebook. He's like, "I need to talk to you about the show." And I was really hoping he was going to want to come on the show, but he must have been drunk, because when I was like, "Well, text me tomorrow or call me tomorrow," and he never did. I'm still getting over being sick, so you're probably going to cut out a lot of coughs too.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, we'll see what time allows. I might have to just leave some of them in, just roll with it. El natural.
Doesn't bother me. I'm just sure people don't want to listen to me hacking up along.
Well, there's not that many people listening, so I think you're going to be okay.
Fair enough. Our first guest was a fucking celebrity, and you're going to make us look like fucking chumps.
Hell yeah.
Hello.
We'll never get any.
Hey, Kevin, what's up?
Hi guys, how you doing?
Doing good,
Good.
man. Thanks for coming on the show. We're stoked to fucking have you on, dude.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're in a busy fucking time right now, man. You got this album coming out. You got wrap-up parties you're going to. You're fucking busy, man.
Yeah, it's I always try to have a few things going on at a time. Otherwise, I get bored and depressed. So, yeah, this is an exciting time right now with the new album coming out for sure.
Tell us about the album. What brought that on? I know that the Colbert Report is wrapping up, and so you got this new album coming out now. What is it? Was it the timing of that wrapping up that spawned that? Or are you just ready to put it out, or?
Oh yeah, no, it didn't have anything to do with one thing had nothing to do with the other. It was it was more that I it's been 3 years since I recorded my first full length comedy album, so I had I'd in that time written a new hour and had been working it out in clubs and whatnot and getting it ready to be recorded, and so we recorded it in August, and then ended up having some post-production headaches and problems, which we can definitely get into detail with. And so once the album
familiar
was,
with that.
yeah, once the album was finally ready to go, it was I wanted to wait till after the holidays and everything, so so I didn't kind of get wrapped in with all the with all the end of the year and all the holiday stuff, and it's a new year and a new start, so I figured it would be a good time to get the album released when when there's not a heck of a lot going on, so I can get a little of attention for it, I guess.
Absolutely. Now, and where I'm like super in is I love people's Genesis story. I love hearing about how they started out, how they got into it, like, because a lot of people, especially in the comedy business, will struggle for a lifetime and
Yeah.
not get above the open mic level, let alone doing warm up for major shows and having albums
Yeah.
coming out and stuff like that. So can you talk to us a little bit about kind of how you got into it and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, are we already on? Are we rolling?
Yeah, this is how our show kind of rolls. It's kind of
Okay.
it's just kind of unprofessional like that.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I didn't know if you guys were just doing a little pre-interview or if we're actually rolling.
Yeah,
so.
we don't plan or anything
That's
like
fine.
that.
That's fine. That's fine. So you're asking how I got my start?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, well, stand up is what I wanted to do since I was like literally 5, 6 years old, and I started seeing comedy on television and just was automatically a fan of stand up and sketch, stand up especially.
Mm-hmm.
And I was also the funny kid in my class, so it just right away it just seemed okay, this is what I want to do with my life. That's what I want to be when I grow up. And fortunately for me, what I wanted to be when I was 5, 6 years old was something that was attainable. It wasn't to be an astronaut or to be a quarterback for the Patriots. It was to be a comedian. And so even as a kid, I had the presence of mind that this is what I was going to do, is what I wanted to do. And to prepare for that, I started to do theater. Grade school productions and high school productions and community theater and summer stock, all while I was young, all with the idea that it was specifically to make sure I was comfortable as possible on stage when it became time to be a stand-up. And that put me in a little bit ahead of the game when I started because, unlike other open micers, I wasn't nervous to get on stage, and even though my material wasn't polished and wasn't strong yet, I at least looked comfortable on stage, and that gave me a little leg up at the beginning. So I did lots of theater, and then I went and apprenticed at something called the Williamstown Theater Festival, which is the best and most prestigious summer stock festival in the country. And the reason I did it was, as an apprentice, I would get to take a stand-up comedy class from Lewis Black. So
Whoa.
Yeah, that was back in 1999 when Lewis was, he was just kind of starting out on The Daily Show. He was already, for comedy fans, was big, but he, his star was just on the rise and really hadn't taken off. So I jumped at that, and I did that for the summer. And then after that, I started out doing guest spots at a club in Albany, New York, which was the closest comedy club to where I grew up in Western Massachusetts. And I did that for about a year. And I made friends with, Lisa Lampanelli was the comic back then, again, who was not a star yet, but was a headlining and she kind of took me under her wing, and she was teaching a class at a club in New York, and she's the one who was instrumental in getting me to move down to New York, and she helped me. I wrote for her, and I did some, odd jobs, I guess you could say even assistant work for her to help pay the bills, and she got me set up at Stand Up New York, working the door, and I did that for a couple of years, and just was living the life of a young comic, doing spots and hanging out and writing and growing and learning as much as I can. And, one thing leads to another, and all of a sudden 14, 15 years have passed, and it's my career now.
Wow. That's the gauntlet too, really, is that working the door and getting your, getting your material worked out and, going on stage. I think that's what usually gets people, early on,
Well, you know what? I think what gets people early on is, it's really difficult for a young comic to get stage time in general, and then to get to be able to, a lot of times your stage time is really late at night. It's when when the pro show is ended, they'll start with some guest spots and stuff like that. And so what's difficult is, how do you do that and then make money for yourself? If you have to have a day job where you have to be in an office at 8 a.m, that's difficult when your last spot of the night may not be till 1 a.m. So for me, I really enjoyed doing the door at a club, because, I was there for 6-7 hours a night, but the opposite of it would have been going to some of these open mics. Like there was one called, Gladys's, which was in the back of a hamburger restaurant. And it was an open mic where you had to go and sign up, and then throughout the night you didn't know when you were going on. They would just pick the next name out of a fishbowl.
What?
So you would be there watching other open micers for 5 hours.
Oh, wow.
So I figured, well, if I'm going to put 5-6 hours in towards getting a spot, I might as well do it at a club where I get to sit and watch, night in and night out. I was watching Jim Gaffigan and Greg Giraldo and Todd Barry and Dave Attell, and the list goes on of these amazing comics. And I was getting to watch them and be far more entertained than if I was watching a bunch of open micers, but also studying how they worked on a joke and what their process of polishing it and how a bit could form over a couple of weeks. And it really became like my college. And so I would sit there night in and night out and absorbing and watching and learning, and then getting to go up late at night and try my own stuff out and make connections, and at the end of the night get paid $15 or $20 and get get some pizza and burgers from the place next door for my efforts. So that's something I always recommend to people if they get a chance to do, is to work for a comedy club for your stage time at the beginning, because there's so much you can get out of it.
Yeah, it sounds like a super valuable experience too, especially when you're talking about listening and watching these comics, because I imagine, and from my perspective, obviously, not never being in the, comedy field or doing like stand up or anything, but from my perspective, there's this magic of like a comic comes on stage, they do their bit or their act, and you think that's like, it looks like it's off the top of their head. You know what I mean? Like, and
Right.
you feel like, oh man, this guy he's just funny. But you, like you're saying, like you get to watch them go through these bits and work on them and refine them and really get behind the curtain and kind of go, oh, okay, so it does take, a couple of different tries.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's the art to it, right? Because everybody, like, comedians go up and they seem so conversational. So then everybody thinks, oh, I'm the funny guy of the group. I could be a stand-up comedian. And I don't think they really understand that there is a lot of hard work put into it, and you have to make those connections, and you have to study guys like the ones you were just talking about. So
Exactly.
it's just like, to me, it's just like anything else. If you're in a band, you play everywhere you can. If you're a stand-up comedian, you do the same thing. Sorry, I don't mean to babble
No,
here.
right. Exactly right.
Kevin, I had a question for you. Myself, I grew up, when I was about 12 or 13 is when I kind of discovered Comedy Central, which would have been in the mid to early 90s, before they had a lot of original content. And I remember they used to show stand-up almost all day long. It was stand-up and then SNL reruns and Kids in the Hall.
Right.
So through that, I ran, I feel like even at a young age, I got a broad experience with a lot of different comedians. Who were the comedians that you feel really inspired you, or that you thought were the best, or you try to emulate through your career?
Well, back in in the 80s and the 90s, especially like the 80s, yeah, it was the comedy boom, and it was the cable TV boom. So all these new cable TV channels were coming up, and stand up was cheap to produce, to make a show. So they
Sure.
all had stand up, and it actually kind of hurt the industry in the long run. But for me, for a kid, I was able to watch stand up every night. And the guys back then who I loved, who were getting on all those cable shows were, of course, Jerry Seinfeld. He was the top dog. Loved him. And I also loved Eddie Murphy, who wasn't doing those shows, but was, every kid knew Eddie Murphy, because we had pirated audio tapes of Delirious and Raw that
Right.
you could listen to without your parents knowing. So loved those two guys above all back then. But, the list of comics who influenced me as a young man, or not even a young man, as a child, is endless. I mean, guys more obscure today, but guys like Dennis Wolfberg, who I loved, and I mean, Lewis Black, even back then, was making a name for himself, and guys like Nick DiPaolo and Todd Barry and just so many of them, Bobby Slayton and Dom Irera, and the list goes on and on. I mean, there was so many more who I loved than that I didn't like.
Sure.
So that was all through my childhood, and then coming up as a teenager or a little bit later, I got into, of course, George Carlin, and then you do your homework a little bit, you do your research, and it's just like music. You kind of, if you're really interested in it, you find out who influenced the guys that you like, and you go back and next step. So I was a big rock and roll fan, so I loved the Rolling Stones, and from them I was like, oh well, I started checking out Muddy Waters and BB King and Chuck Berry, finding their influences. So from that first generation, finding out their influences being Carlin and Richard Pryor, and then Bob
Lenny
Newhart,
Bruce.
I love, and Lenny Bruce. I respect Lenny Bruce more than I ever loved his comedy, but I respect what he did. But guys like Bob Newhart and Woody Allen and Jonathan Winters, and that older generation I really got into, and now there's so many contemporaries who I'm a fan of, and I'm still, anytime I'm in a club and Dave Attell walks in, I can guarantee you I will be in that room watching him every time that guy performs.
I agree. To me, Dave Attell is one of the most underappreciated comedians, and I find it hard to believe that he hasn't, gone on to any other things as far as cameos in movies and things like that, because he's such a sharp, harsh wit. Are there comedians that are you kind of surprised that they didn't crack through the mainstream a little bit more? You see things like the Blue Collar Comedy Tour and things like that, and they're very polarizing, I guess, in my opinion, anyway. So are there any guys that you see things like that on TV and you think, wow, those guys made it, but I can't believe Dave Attell hasn't cracked through more? Or you mentioned Greg Giraldo, who I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And, it's a really tragic story, and just to think of what the things he could have been doing now, or the material he could have been producing. So is there anybody else like that you can?
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of comics. I mean, I think Dave Attell has cracked through. He's had Insomniac, and he's had Dave's Old Porn, and he's one of the most respected comics that we have. But as far as like the mainstream pop culture, guys who haven't translated their comedy to movie stardom or something like that, there's a million guys. There's it shocks me that Brian Regan isn't, being that he's the funniest man in the world, isn't the number one, star in the world. Guys like that, or there's plenty of people. Ted Alexandro is a very funny comic and a buddy of mine, and guys like him who have done everything. I would love to see, for the sake of the world and the comedy community, that they be embraced more and find a wider audience, because they have really something funny to say and interesting as well. The list goes on and on of guys who in a just and perfect world would would be, selling out amphitheaters nightly and be household names. But in each and every one of those guys all does have a career and is doing well,
Right.
and it has made it. So there's just so many guys I'm a fan of that if I'm a fan of, I'm wishing we're as big as it could get.
Well, and I think that a lot of times too, like from our perspective, success is like, oh, are they in movies, or do they have a sitcom, or are they on a HBO original? But really, I think in reality, success, from what I'm hearing and seeing on a comic level, is, look, do you work every night? Are you constantly booked? Are people calling you for interviews? Are you busy? To me, that level of success is almost unachievable. It's like 1% of comics are going to reach the level where they're working constantly. They've always got something going on.
Exactly. It's all about your own definition of made it and what made it means. I mean, to some level, I've made it. There's still a lot further I anticipate going, and I hope to go. And I hope that 5 years from now, I look back listen back to this interview and laugh that at that time I thought I had made it. You know what I'm saying?
I think,
but
yeah,
I
definitely.
don't have a day job. Every penny I make is a result of being funny. So in that respect, I've made it. And I aspire to be not. I don't aspire to be a leading man, a movie star, but I would like to be able to get my stand up and to a level where I can come to a town and do the theater and sell it out. Like, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be another level of making it. So I, to each his own, I think.
Absolutely. Talk just a bit, because I'm gonna cut Travis off, because that's kind of what I do. It's my role on the show.
Exactly.
Is I cut him off constantly.
Okay.
So allow me to cut him off and ask a little bit about how did you come across snagging the gig of doing the opening at Colbert? Because to me, that's a big deal, man.
Sure.
Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah, I did. I did a lot of audience warm up now, which I kind of got into because of just being a stand up in the city and I did a lot of MC work at clubs, which is a lot of the same muscle that it takes to be a warm up guy. And I did a lot of work at the UCB working on improv, which is where a lot of warm up is improv. So basically, I had done a couple of different shows here and there and filled in, and a spot to be one of the warm up guys a few years ago opened up at the Daily Show, and I was given an opportunity to somebody. One of the producers, one of the writers, guys in the crew are some of them are stand-ups, and I know through the stand-up and know me by personally and by reputation. So somebody said, oh, who would probably be good at this is Kevin Bartini, and another guy was like, yeah, he would. Let's give him a shot. So I got the call, and they brought, how you do it is they bring you in to do one episode, and you get paid and everything else, and that episode is your audition. It's a live audition, and Jon Stewart and the producers are watching, and if John likes you, you're in, and if he doesn't, you get to say that you did it once, and you'll never hear from us again.
Holy
was what I was told.
shit! Wow.
So yeah, so I did it. It went well. John liked me, and after a couple of years with them, a spot over on the rotation over at Colbert opened up, and being that it's the same production company and the two entities are very closely intertwined, that a call was made, one producer to another. We need somebody. Who are you guys using? And I got sent over there, and it was kind of the same thing. They gave me a couple of dates, and if all goes well and Steven likes you, then you get to do more. And if not, then the next time a couple dates open, they call some to the Daily Show or to another show and say, who are you using, and start the process over. So I was fortunate that I was liked by both shows and got to be a part of them, because I'm a huge fan of both shows.
Yeah, and that's fucking epic, man. To have Jon Stewart like sitting there passing judgment over your set, man, that's fucking big.
Well, it's not my set. That should be said. It's not.
Okay.
It's not stand up. It's audience warm up, and they're two different things.
Okay.
I don't do I don't do any stand up when it's all crowd work and cheerleading and getting the audience excited and getting them focused and definitely entertained, but also getting them focused and ready for the show and understanding what the producers are expecting of them as an audience. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's much more where you say, you know, like with stand-ups, you want to make it look conversational and look like you're in you know, you're thinking of this stuff off the top of your head. With crowd work, it is literally off the top of your head because you don't know what the person's gonna answer you, and you have to be able to improv and riff off of that. So I rarely in audience warm up, unless we're really stretching for time, do I ever do my regular stand-up.
That's interesting. Okay, Travis, you go. You go ahead and say your thing now.
All right, thanks. Kevin, you brought up George Carlin earlier, and George Carlin, I think, is probably the best comedian of all time.
Sure.
You can argue Richard Pryor and a couple other people, but George Carlin to me is just an amazing man.
Yeah.
Beyond comedy, you know, the philosophy and the political views and things like that. And I wanted to bring up a story that I saw through the research is that you actually went to an effort to rename a street after George Carlin.
Yeah.
So I was curious as to kind of what that process was, your interactions with the Carlin family,
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately that came to fruition. So I was hoping maybe you can share that story with us and kind of give us the process.
Sure. It was a 3-year campaign to get New York City to name a street for George Carlin, and to get New York City to name a street from anyone is it's an uphill battle from the get-go. So what happened was I live in the neighborhood that George Carlin grew up in generally. You know, my apartment is close to his street. So yeah, I was a huge admirer and fan of George Carlin and everything. And when his autobiography came out after he had died, I read it, and in the book he dedicates like 2 chapters to the neighborhood, and it was such a huge part of his life, and his, you know, his family, his mother moved to that block when he was like 2 or 3 years old, and she maintained a residence there up until she could no longer live on her own. So we're talking 40, 50 years.
Mhm.
The Carlin family was on this street. And if you listen to Occupation Fool and Class Clown, they're all about that street and et cetera. So I walked over, and just to kind of see, because he had written the address of the actual building in the book. So I walked over to see the building and just kind of walked the street and everything as a fan. And it just struck me right away that you would have no idea that George Carlin ever was there. There was no plaque on the building. The street wasn't named after him. There was no corned beef sandwich at a deli named. No, you would have no idea. And like I said, you know, if you're for the George Carlin fans, he's so associated with that area. It would be almost akin to going to Liverpool and seeing nothing about the Beatles. You know, they're making no reference to them on Abbey Road. It just wouldn't make sense. So I said it to a comic friend a couple days later. I just told him what I told you, and I just said, boy, somebody should get the city to name the street after George. And he just said, well, why don't you do it? And it was like, yeah, okay, why don't I do it? So I started a campaign. I started like literally standing up on the corner of 121st Street and Broadway with a clipboard in my hand, getting to people to stop and sign a petition. And then we got an online petition going, and we just got it rolling. And usually these things take about 18 months. This one took 3 years, and one of the main reasons was we met opposition in the form of the Catholic Church.
What?
Yeah.
That sounds about right.
But why though?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Well, on the stretch of road that we wanted to name after George Carlin, on that street is Corpus Christi Church. And the Corpus Christi is the church where George's mother went. It's also right next door is their parochial school where George actually attended. He's their most famous alumni. depending on the time and who's in charge and running that parish, they either love George Carlin or they hate him. And it just so happened that at the time that I was doing this, the reverend who was in charge of their parish had a personal beef with George Carlin, knew him, and had a personal grievance against him. So he raised opposition to us, and as it ended up happening, it made a big story out of it. So it became a national news story. We were in every paper. We were on every news channel. It was covering this comic who wants to name a street for George Carlin, and the fight he's having with the Catholic Church. And I should say that the opposition, they were able to, we had in whatever amount of time it took us, they were also able to, if they had wanted to, get a petition to stop us or whatever. He chose to do a letter writing campaign. He ended up getting 80 letters written in to the community board, 80, from members of his congregation. We had 250 signatures from people just on his street. Just on that one stretch of road, we had 250. Altogether, worldwide, we had just short of 10,000 signatures of support. So it was just a matter of time, and it made it a lot more fun, but we were able to beat them back and come to a compromise and get it pushed through. And, to make a long story, obviously not short, but a little less long, 3 years later, we, the city council, New York City Council unanimously voted in support. It was signed by the mayor, and this October we had the unveiling ceremony with Colin Quinn was there speaking, and myself, and members of the Carlin family, and a big show at Caroline's, and it was amazing. So now if you are in New York City, you can go to West 121st Street and Amsterdam Ave, and West 121st Street and Morningside Ave, and see the signs that mark George Carlin Way. It's there forever, and you can get your picture taken in front of it.
As it fucking should be, too, man. For
That's
real.
Right. Yeah, it was such a no-brainer, that I actually, the first thing I did was I sent an email through Facebook to George's daughter Kelly, asking her permission. And one of the reasons was that I was half expecting her to get back in touch with me and say, thanks for the offer, but, it's already happening. We're already working on it, and here's who you can contact to help out. But nobody had really thought of it yet. So it ended up being me who got to do it.
That's just fucking amazing whenever you can kind of bring something like that to light and kind of rectify it. You see something kind of wrong with the world and you can correct it. I know it's a small victory, but I think to a lot of people that means something, you know what I mean? Because I think a lot of people looked up to that dude, and he was really influential. So I can't imagine.
And it's the first time in New York City, which is known as the undisputed greatest comedy city in the world, is New York City. It's the first time that New York has named a street for a comedian. It's the first time that they've honored any of us. And, it's been the home to how many comedy clubs and how many comedy rooms and how many comics, and how much have we given to this city over the years. And it's like, finally, they're going to honor one of our own. And so it's just a start. We got George, who is a quintessential New Yorker and who all comics respect and look up to. And you're right, is, if not the greatest stand-up comedian ever, he's always in the conversation of the top 2 or top 3. And I think at the end of the day, it's pretty much a tie, and it just comes down to your personal preference, whether you're a Carlin guy or a Pryor guy or a Bill Cosby guy, really,
So I think our listeners are starting to get a picture. So, you're correcting wrongs in the world. You got the album coming out, which the Unintentional White Album, as I understand, correct? And,
Yep.
You got opening stuff. So I think the question that's on everybody's mind is, what the fuck are you doing on this show? Like, what's that about?
Well, I have an album to promote, really, and that I'm doing. The other reason I put the album out in the beginning of January is it gives me, as far as promotion, gives me a reason not to go out into the cold. So I I think podcasts are for comedians are such an invaluable tool to reach a new audience and new people. So I am doing, as many radio guest appearances and podcast guest appearances and anything else that I can, in a way to raise my own brand and to try to move some albums, basically. So I've just reached out to podcasts all over the world. I did one yesterday out of Finland, and I think I'm doing another one tomorrow out of Australia. And hopefully, I enjoy being a guest on podcasts, and I enjoy that it opens up, because I listen to a lot, opens up new podcasts for me to get into and check out. And hopefully it's a win-win at the end of the day. I hope some of your listeners become fans of mine and check out my album and my podcast. And I hope by me doing this that it opens you guys up to some of my fans who can check you out. And, and it just begins a relationship. That's why I'm doing them.
I think there's only one
Excellent.
flaw with the plan, though, because I saw that you were on a lot of podcasts, and I thought that's fucking genius. You know what I mean? Like, because Travis and I were talking about it. Like, I think it's an undervalued medium in terms of, like, when you have something to promote, you got something going on. But I think the flaw in the plan is that when you do get to that next level, then people are going to be like, oh, come on our show, and you're like, listen, I'm doing 5 dates in LA, I'm doing 6 dates, I can't, I literally don't have time, and then these people are going to fucking turn on you, and they're going to be like, that motherfucker.
Well, I don't know.
Give us 6 months if we're gonna bash the shit out of you.
Let me tell you guys, I hope nothing more happens than I get too busy to do this shit and too successful. I don't see that happening. That's the thing with being a comedian, is you perform at night, you do a few sets, and otherwise you got plenty of time. So I don't ever want to be that guy who says, no, I can't find even 15 minutes to sit on my couch and join you via Skype. Which, that I don't want to be the guy who forgets the people who were there as he was going on his way up. So it's something I enjoy doing, and like I said, I hope to be a guest on your podcast and anyone else anytime for here on out, because I'm a fan of the medium, and like I said, it seems to be a win-win. So
right on. Hey, bump your podcast a little bit. You said you had a podcast, right?
Yeah, I do. In fact, we're recording new episodes next week, and we will debut back on January 25th. My podcast is called the Movie Preview Review Podcast, and on every episode, I'm joined by my co-host and a special guest, usually a comic, and we review new movies based on having only seen their previews.
Get the fuck out of here.
We've done that.
No fucking shit, man. That's fucking hilarious. We did that exact.
Yeah.
Granted, we've only done it once, so I'm not saying
and
you
it wasn't
stole
funny.
it from us or anything.
Right.
Yeah,
No,
it's a
I'm
funny
sure you're
podcast.
way funnier than we are.
It's a funny podcast. I hope people check it out. We're going to have some we just moved into a new studio on the east side of the East Village, and we're going to have some really amazing guests, not just awesome, huge comics, but we're going to be getting some people from the world of rock and roll and some actual people from movies, and it's a really fun concept, and it just really, we watch a podcast or a preview or two, and then we just kind of riff on it, and we just let a conversation happen, and some of us trash the movie, some of us like it, so it makes for a cool dynamic.
I think that.
So having said that, I'm cutting you off this time, Adam.
Fine, go for it.
So having said that, this is going to be a big year for movies with Star Wars, and I think Terminator comes out this year, and Mad Max. Is there any trailer that you've seen that you're excited to see the movie come out this year?
That I'm excited to see the movie come out. Off the top of my head, no, honestly. I haven't, in fairness, I haven't watched a lot of previews because we aren't recording right now.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing is, it's my producer's job to actually watch all the previews and pick it out. One of the things is I along with my guests and my co-host, don't know what movies we're going to be seeing the previews for.
That's
so
awesome.
So it's 100% just natural. It's no writing jokes that you're trying to slide in and all that. It's just gut reactions. So, and we have a balance on the show. I have my co-host consists of Jay is a comedian, and he's into sci-fi, and he's into the superhero kind of movies big time, and so is our producer Adam. And then we have my wife, who's our news girl, and she's into the the chick flicks and stuff like that, and I just I have my own tastes of I like more of drama and more comedy and stuff with a story and acting, and I'm not so much into the CGI. So and then whatever our guest is into, so it becomes a balance of these guys are into sci-fi and superheroes, and I have no patience and no time for it. So while I'm bashing those movies, they're probably standing up for them, and we can all bash the next Nicholas Sparks white people kissing chick flick while Jessica is first in line for it. So it becomes a good back and forth where there's never a time usually where all four of us are loving on a movie or hating on it simultaneously.
Yeah, that sounds genius. The fact that you guys aren't going to see it before, so you just kind of get that fresh look at it and just start ripping on it, or loving it, or fanboying it, or whatever the case is. That's
right. Yeah, you're one man's genius is another man's. I'm just too goddamn lazy to do any work before I go on.
Sounds.
Oh, we're definitely familiar with that.
Fuck yeah. We don't.
Yeah, so it's funny. I really don't see a lot of previews because I don't seek them out, and I don't. Movies are so expensive these days. I don't go to the theater nearly as often as I used to, so I don't see a lot of previews of anything that I'm wildly excited about. I've probably only been to a movie probably twice in the last 6 months, where I used to go once or twice a week.
That's kind of a tragedy, though, man. I mean, like,
Well, it is. No, it is, but it is and it isn't. It's a movie theater here in New York. A ticket to a movie is like $15.
Good point.
So that's kind of the premise of the whole thing. Is you can tell so much about a movie from its previews. Really, the movie has to really make itself seem amazing and something you need to see right away. That's worth your hard-earned $15. And I'm like back in the golden age of the movies. We're talking back in the 40s and during the Depression, movies were still a booming industry because it was a way for people to escape their troubles for 2 hours. And back then, that was like it cost like a nickel to go. And when you adjust for inflation, a nickel then is not $15 now.
Right.
A nickel would have gotten you into a movie or would have gotten you 2 loaves of bread. You know what I'm saying? So it's so much more that the movie going audience is being required to cough up to see a movie. And then when you spend your $15 and you're just seeing some CGI piece of crap that doesn't have a good story and the poor actors have poor dialogue to play with, it's like, well, why would I go see it? So rarely do we ever say, this is a movie that you need to avoid at all costs. We kind of break it down as, is this something that I would actually spend $15 to go see now? Or is it something that I'll want to see once it's available on Netflix to see for free? Or is it something like, I'll wait and never see it, or I'll see it in the theater, but only because I'm a comic and I'm on the road and it's a Friday afternoon and I got nothing else to do, that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I don't go to the theaters a lot, but I have a 60-inch flat screen TV in my living room with surround sound, and I can wait 2 months and it's out on DVD, or I can rent it off of iTunes. And why would I go sit amongst strangers who are coughing and all of that when I can watch it in the privacy of my own home on a huge, awesome screen? And
Fuck yeah. I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Travis and I will definitely come over and watch movies. I appreciate the invitation, and we're there. I mean,
yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that subtext of what I was saying.
it was subtle, but I mean, I got there. We don't want to monopolize
unions now, and I get the free screeners a lot of times too. So like all the good, now come Oscar time, I'm getting all the screeners. I get to watch them here for free anyway. Yeah.
Fucking shit, man.
This year's been crap. I haven't liked any of the screeners I've gotten, if that makes you feel any better.
Oh, are you allowed to say which ones you've gotten that you didn't like?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that one, which won the Golden Globe last night, Boyhood. That's the worst movie I've seen in years.
That's the one where they recorded for like 12 or 15 years, right? Like that's
it's the concept, which is we're going to make a movie about a boy growing up, and we're going to film the same boy off and on for 12 years or something. So yeah, you see him when he's a precocious, adorable 5-year-old, and then you see him up until he's off to college and he's like 18. It's a genius concept, but where it comes short is the adorable 5-year-old, by the time he was 7, had absolutely no charisma and have absolutely no screen presence, and now they're just following the world's most boring person.
But they're committed.
And they stretched this movie out. It was like 3.5 hours long. It was abhorrent. I could not wait for it to end. It was so bad. But because it's different and inventive, it's probably going to win Best Picture.
I just don't understand that concept either, because it's not, like, we've seen that before. I mean, who's that kid from like The Sixth Sense, right? Like when he was in The Sixth Sense, you were like, oh, this kid, like he's and then he gets a little older, and you're like, wow, this is getting awkward now. It's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, sure. Yeah, you were watching like through those awkward years and stuff, but it was just like there was no plot, there was no story, there was no real bad guy, and he just was such a boring person to watch. Literally no charisma, nothing to him. That I was just like, it was so I hated that. What else do we got? Saw the one about Stephen Hawking. That was pretty good. Birdman, I didn't care for.
Really?
And yeah, have you seen it?
No, but it's getting a lot.
It's a great trailer.
Yeah, and it's getting a.
Birdman was a great trailer.
Yeah.
It's a really good movie, well acted and everything, but they have this whole supernatural element to it that just changed. I don't know, the whole ending. I don't want to give a lot away. I think personally it would have been a better movie if they didn't have this whole supernatural element, and if it was just following a movie star from 20 years ago who was Birdman or Batman and best known for that, following him.
Right. So if it was just the Michael Keaton story, it would have been
just Michael Keaton story, and the whole story of him trying to put on a Broadway show to have a career come back and all that. But then there was this weird added element of he is really kind of Birdman, and he can make things move with his mind, and he can fly and stuff like that. That it was just kind of the same feeling like when I watched From Dusk Till Dawn. Like, I loved that first half of that movie and wanted to see that movie play out, but then they went into the titty bar and it became 100% different film. It's like, I like both of those elements of themselves, but you put them together, it's not chocolate and peanut butter.
No, that's two movies though, and I've always contended that that's two different movies.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's like a sequel at that point.
And I would have enjoyed both of those movies in and of themselves as a full movie.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't care for them when they came colliding together. And that's what this is too. It's like, if you want to make a supernatural movie, that's great, but so much of this movie was so enjoyable and so interesting that I just wish you'd played it straight throughout, and I would have liked it a lot more.
Yeah, I agree with Travis. The Michael Keaton story would have been better.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, we have one movie that seems to pop up on every single podcast. So I think that if we didn't ask your opinion of it, then we would be missing our opportunity. So our consensus opinion is that Back to the Future may be the best movie ever made. So what is your opinion on that movie?
Oh, yeah.
And is there an incestual subtext
Oh, my
to it?
God.
Because Adam swears there's not, but I swear that there is.
Oh, there's definitely an incestual subtext, yeah.
Thank you.
His mom wants to bang him. There's no two ways
about it.
But he doesn't know that that's his mom.
He knows. She doesn't know.
Or she doesn't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, she doesn't know that's her kid. I mean, is it incestuous if she doesn't know, though?
Well, it's incestuous that she doesn't know because there's something about him that she's attracted to on a level that she doesn't understand. Even if he reminds her a little bit of her own brother or something like that, it's just a little creepy. Yeah, absolutely. But it's a good movie. I absolutely have no qualms with Back to the Future.
I can't believe you sided with Travis, and I can't argue with the fucking guest either. That's a bitch move, Travis. It's a fucking bitch move.
You don't pick up on the weird.
I just feel like it's more about, the dad hits him with the car, right? And so she's got this like, I'm feeling sorry for you because my dad hit you, and plus they set her up as this kind of like sheltered life where she doesn't get to talk to boys and hang out with boys, and she kind of wants to. So here's this young boy in her house that's injured, that she's nursing back to health, that needs her help and all that. And she kind of goes more down that route because you see later how easy it is for her to go out with,
yeah, but there's also the whole stuff of what did she do to or with him while he was unconscious. The guy had a head wound, yet she knows what his underwear says on the inside. Was Marty McFly's wiener the first wiener she ever saw?
It's possible, man.
You know what I'm saying? Did she play with it? There's a lot of subtext in there of creepy creepy incest, definitely.
It's a win.
Maybe that's why.
It's a win for me.
Maybe that's why the actress didn't come back and do the second one. Maybe that's why they had to replace her. She's like, this is fucking creepy, man.
I didn't replace her. You're crazy.
I can't do any more of these. We don't want to monopolize all your time, but
Oh no, it's fine.
you know, if you got to go, whatever, just give us the fuck off or whatever.
I'm good for another 10, 15 minutes.
All right, excellent, good deal.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, we got 10 or 15 more
One
minutes.
more. All right, so like I said, I've watched stand-up for the past 20 years.
Yeah.
And something that's always amazing to me is that stand-ups that I've listened to, interviews and things like that, they've always said that they've learned more from bombing than from being successful. Has there ever been a show that you've, totally bombed in front of or played in front of one or two people that you kind of learned from, or do you agree with that sentiment?
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. It's the yin and the yang. You can't, bombing is a huge part of the process, of the writing process, of everything, of learning and of growing. And, especially in the early years, you bomb all the time. And it's part of the, it separates the wheat from the chaff. It's about the tenacity of the guys who have the nerve to bomb and then get up the very next night or an hour later and do it all over again and keep taking those hits. Yeah, you learn a lot. You learn from a bomb, you try to analyze it. If you record yourself, well, whose fault was it? Was this my fault? Was this the audience's fault? Sometimes, I'll look back and I'll realize that maybe in the first minute or something, I said something that is incongruous with my character. Maybe I said something that makes me sound unlikable. Maybe it was, what was it that I did? And you grow and I don't want to say that I never bomb anymore, but I'm at a point now where I have consistency and where because I've bombed and because I've gone through that gauntlet over the years, that I'm a little bit more in tune with it, and I can spot a bomb coming on and have the tricks up my sleeve to be able to transition, to be able to pull, to pull back on the yoke a little earlier and bring the nose back up to at least a safe flight. But I absolutely, there's times now where I hold myself to a different standard and different level. So where I may come off stage and, especially if there's a citizen back there like my wife, who's not a comic, who might say, "Oh, you did good, you did great." And I'll be like, "Oh no, that was shit. That was, for me, that was a bomb because this didn't work, that didn't work, and whatever." But, yeah, you have to get used to it. And I have definitely played nights in comedy clubs in New York City where there's 2 people in the audience or 4 people in the audience. That's another part of it. And for me, that is like, taking your swings in the batters, in the on deck box with a donut on your bat. It's just more difficult. But when it's time and you take the donut off and now you're in front of the full house at the club, you can hit a home run.
Yeah, I would definitely say that. I think, like you said, that's where you find out who has the stones. Can you bomb multiple times and still kind of keep rolling with the punches?
Right. And when you're especially when you're a baby comic, you're so excited to be doing it, or at least I was, that even when I bombed, I wasn't ready to slip my wrists and end it all. I was living on a high of the one joke that maybe got a laugh. Like in that whole swamp of shit for 5 or 10 minutes, this one little flower poked through, and that must mean that joke is super strong or has real potential if these people hated me so much but they still liked that one bit.
Yeah, it just takes that. It's like you said, back to the baseball thing. It's like you don't remember the strikeouts, you just remember all the home runs. And it's just that one home run keeps you coming back.
Yeah, and in comedy, and because I've been doing it 15 years. At this point, you live in an eternal gray area with your performing. You vividly remember your worst bomb and your best crush, and everything else just kind of fades into a mist of just spots. So people will come up and will say, "Oh, we saw you on this show," or ask questions like, I really don't. They all become one. I don't remember. I remember instances and moments. But if it's not the best I've ever done or the most humiliating, it's just it gets filed into one of the many times I was on stage.
Fuck yeah, man. Well, Mr.
Yeah.
Kevin Bartini, we are stoked to have you on the show. Bump all your stuff so people know where to get your album and where they can see you
Okay.
on stage and where they can get to your podcast and all that.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate it. I mean it. I hope we can do this again.
Yeah.
My website is the main thing because that's where you can go and find links to everything. It's kevinbartini.com, and that's Bartini like the cocktail, only with a B. And from there, you can find me on Twitter, and you can find me on Facebook and everything else. And you can find my new album, the Unintentionally White album. And my last album is available also. It's called Showing the Horses Who's Boss, and they're both available as of tomorrow, the 13th. They will both be available wide release all over the internet, Amazon, iTunes, whatever. But the easiest thing to remember is just to go to kevinbartini.com, and from there you can find links also to the podcast, which is the Movie Preview Review podcast, and new episodes of that come out January 25th.
Excellent. I'm definitely going to be listening. So I know I'm going to make Travis listen too. He doesn't even listen to our show, so it'll kind of.
Oh, no?
No.
No. Well, I don't listen to my own show. You've done it. You lived it.
That's a lie, dude. To be honest with you, I wasn't going to. We've done this for Kevin. We've done this about what episode is this? 10, 11?
11, yeah.
We have a lot of unproduced episodes too. We have a lot of technical issues, Kevin. But
yeah.
At first, I was like, I don't want to listen to my own self talk because you don't want to laugh at your own jokes. But man, the first week I listened and I thought I was hilarious. So I listen every week. I'm my own biggest fan, other than my mom.
Oh, that's true. Travis's mom. They got to get that hashtag going.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Bartini, thank you for being on the show. We appreciate it, and we will definitely try to hit you up and do this again sometime.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Thanks. Bye,
right.
man.
See you later.
Let's see. Do I have any fucking stories or anything?
I can't believe you don't have any fucking stories, man.
I'm trying to think, dude. Certainly something.
Certainly you got kicked out of somewhere, or Michaela, you got mad at you, and then, you got in a huge fight, and then you had to make up because you were wrong. I mean, certainly.
Oh, dude, I have a story. Well, it's not really, it's not that interesting, but so my birthday's this week.
Oh, happy birthday.
So, thanks. So, Michaela, dude, we got 3 kids, so we don't ever get to go on, like, dates and shit.
Right.
So, Michaela got a sitter, and she planned that we were going to go to dinner, last Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So we started looking at all these restaurants, like nice fucking restaurants, like you're going to spend $150 just for dinner and drinks and shit. And so we dropped the kids off. We're driving up there, and I should clarify that we're driving I'm about 45 minutes to an hour south of Indianapolis. So we're going to drive to Indy and go to some nice ass restaurant. Excuse me. And as we're driving, we pass a casino. And she's like, hang on. She's like, oh shit, we should have went to the casino, like halfway joking.
Mm-hmm.
So then I do the financial tabulations in my head. And I'm like, well, we're caught up on everything. And we had a little bit of money. So I'm like, you know what? We should go to the casino. Because she's never been and she wanted it. Like, she's always said she wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to fucking go. So, and she was only like half-assed, like joking about it. So we decided that we're going to go to the casino instead of going to dinner because I'm like, look, dinner's another fucking 45 minutes away. It'll be $100.
Mm-hmm.
Might as well save on gas.
Right.
And spend our $100 at the casino. So we go to the casino. This chick has never played slots before, nothing, like never been in a casino. So I'm like, well, let's we go get our drinks and you get all set up and we sit down at the goddamn slot machines. And this broad puts $10 in the machine and hit like $300 in the first 5 minutes.
What?
Yeah. So she's like, should we go? And I'm like, no, we'll be all right. We can spend this.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
No.
The difference is, because we had just got there. We'd been there maybe fucking, like I said, 10, 20 minutes. Now, if we would have been sitting there for an hour and then she was up like $300, I'd have been like, fuck it, let's go. So she put $10 into the machine. She has $360 some odd credit. Meanwhile, I'm taking all the cash we have, just fucking pumping it in the machine. So I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm going to go play fucking poker. So I go play poker. and lose fucking $100 like in fucking 20 minutes.
We got to play poker together sometime.
Dude, I'm actually pretty good at fucking poker.
That's not what I'm hearing.
Well, here's the issue.
Okay.
So you sit down at the table. The maximum is $100 buy-in.
Okay.
So you sit down. So you have the minimum is 50, maximum is 100.
What's the blinds?
$1, $2.
You're telling me it's a $1, $2 game with a $100 max?
Yeah.
That is the shittiest setup I've ever heard of.
Yeah. So, but beyond that, it's not like a tournament style where everybody sits down and they have the same amount of chips and shit. It's no buy-in. So you sit down, and it's cash game. So you sit down, and you can put in maximum of $100. Meanwhile, other people at the table, there's 7 or 8 people sitting there. Well, I sit down, I put my money in, and I realize that all these fuckers have been sitting there for hours. So every one of them has like $500, $600, $700 in their fucking pot, and you have 100.
Yeah, but dude, you should know better. Like, you should never sit in a game where the blinds are that high or that close to your stack. I mean, like for 1-2, minimum $300 should be your max buy-in at a minimum. And an argument could be made for 400 or 500 max buy-in for 1-2. I mean, you pay the blinds 4 times, right? And you're already thinking about an all-in at that point. I mean, it's just
and that's exactly what the fuck happened. So I sat down at the table. I immediately got fucking bullied out of the fucking game.
Yeah,
motherfucker. So then I go back and play again. So, and I think I got punked out. Here's the real story of this, because I think I got punked out and I didn't do anything about it. So you sit down. So I got sat at a different table, same blind, same everything, right? After I just got bullied out of the other table, and these fuckers are betting a shit ton of money. So I sit at the new table, and the dude sitting to my right gets up to go get a drink, and he accidentally kicks me. He's like, "Hey, I'm sorry." I'm like, "No problem." So then we're sitting at the table, and play about 2 or 3 hands, and then I get pocket aces, right? So it's $2, and then the default bet is like 25 because you're playing video fucking poker and you got to touch the screen.
Oh, get the fuck out!
Yeah,
dude, you got fucked, man. You should have never sat in that game.
So I got pocket aces. I bet 25. And the dude that kicked me earlier on accident is like, "We play a friendly game here." And like talking shit to me, to which I think he's kind of joking. And then he's like, "Next time I'm going to kick you on purpose." To which I still think he's fucking joking.
Mm-hmm.
So I have pocket aces. I bet 25. This dude gets all pissed off. And then like I'm sitting before it goes on, this dude wasn't fucking joking. He pretty much just threatened to fucking kick me. But I'm so far beyond it. Like it's like 15, 20 minutes later. That what am I going to do? I can't go back and be like, 20 minutes ago, you started to kick me and I don't appreciate that shit. So I'm sitting there all fucking mad. Meanwhile, this dude is one of those guys that's been sitting there for fucking hours and he has like $700 that he can fucking play with. So finally I get some fucking hand. Michaela's like, "Hey, we got to go because we got to go get the sitter." So I had a strong enough hand that I was like, fuck it, all in. And fucking lost everything, dude. Played fucking 3 or 4 hands.
What'd you go all in on?
Fuck, I don't remember. It was something strong enough that it was worth it.
But yeah, you had like a pair of deuces or something, right? Like,
no, I mean the flop had come out. The flop had come out, and that's the other thing is that's what pissed me off is when I sat down at the first table, because that's really fucking get you, because the dudes at the table have been sitting there for hours and hours and hours. So I play fucking slow. I'm not going in on fucking anything unless I have a really strong hand. And these fuckers are winning on like 4-3 fucking offsuit. And that's why when I sat down on the table, I had pocket aces. I was like, fuck them.
Yeah, but you can't sit at a table where the max buy-in is 50 big blinds. Like that's just not even like logical. Because I mean, like, okay, so let's say you fold 4 times in a row after 4 rounds in a row, right? Waiting to get cards or whatever, and you pay that that big blind 4 times. You already got $8 into the game, right? And then you got to hit the small blind up, right? So that's another $4. So now you're $12 into the game. So now you bought in with 100, and you're already down.
Exactly. You hit the fucking big blind like 3 or 4 times. The flop comes out. Somebody bets, and you're like, "Oh fuck it." So next thing you know, you're down to like $70. Everybody else has like fucking 500. And you're like,
But
well, as soon as you get a fucking hand, you're like, fuck, I got to bet.
I know, but see, what I'm telling you though is I think that whole setup is shady though, because it's a shitty game, but then the people that are sitting there for hours, I promise you at least two of them are working together so that they can sit on a monster stack. Like if I could arrange it where you and I could sit down with $600 and everybody else could only buy in for 100 and we could just sit there all fucking day and just pick off the trash, like it would be a money situation. So it just sounds like a shady game to me, dude.
Exactly. That's where you can't fucking win because they have $600. Blinds are fucking $2, right? They're going to play fucking shit.
Right, because what's going to happen?
Flop comes out, and then it's like you said, 2-3, right? And that motherfucking flop comes out, it's 2-2-3, which in any given situation, a pair of pocket aces or pocket kings or whatever should be good. So you're like, fuck it all in, and this motherfucker's got 2-3, fucking full house on the fucking flop.
But then you forget the other problem that compounds the issue is that, like, you know, let's say you're on the button, let's say you're the dealer, right? And it comes to you got a nice pocket pair. If it's a video and the default lowest you can bet at a 1-2 game is $25,
it's not the default lowest. I think the lowest, yeah, like maybe it was. Like you can bet less, but you had to press more buttons and shit.
Okay,
but my point was, look, dude,
the
first hand, and granted, I'll admit to playing fucking poorly. The first thing I got was after getting bullied out of a fucking table was pocket fucking aces. So I bet 25, and they were like, "No, this is a friendly fucking game." And
well,
God, I don't even care about losing the fucking money. My issue now is that I let that guy fucking punk me out. Because, like I said, 20 minutes later, I'm like, I think he really wanted to fucking kick me.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, I think the whole situation would have been better had you been playing in at an actual, like, legit setup. I think that's a setup to where the casino's just gonna make money. Because are they taking $1 out of every pot, or I mean, how are they?
As far as I know.
Oh, because it's video, so it's probably automatic. So automatically they're raking each pot for the house. So they're all about hands per hour. So as long as they can get 50, 60, 70 hands per hour, you're making $70 an hour per table. They're happy, and so you come in early, like you and me would go in like super early, sit down. I would dump off a bunch of money to you, and then subsequently you would dump off a bunch of money to me. So we'd both be sitting there with about $400 or $500, and then just that's it, run, just sit there all day and fucking, pick off people that can only buy in for 100. It's just a shit setup, man. It's just a shit setup. I mean, I think no matter how it goes down, I don't see very many situations where you come out of that situation ahead, even if you're making the best possible plays available to you, because you just don't have enough to really make people care.
It's like playing with people fucking online, like with that all-in fucking bullshit. Like, you got fucking 2-4 all in. Are you fucking crazy? Like, yeah, fuck it.
All right, man. Well, I got to go pick up some kids and do some dad stuff, and I'm sure you got kids on the way home. So let's wrap it up. Let's give out all our info and do all our little wrap up.
All right. Facebook.com/After6Podcast, After6Podcast.com. Follow me on Twitter at the TMFS. Follow Adam at BiteSizedAC. And we'll try to have another episode sometime within the next month. So
special thanks to Kevin Bartini for coming on the show.
Kevin Bartini is awesome.
All right. Later.
Yeah.